I caught my brother having intimacy with my dog. My 15-year-old brother has recently been showing signs that he has reached the stage of puberty where all he can think about is intimacy. He completely looks the part too. Face full of acne, greasy combed over hair, and a little bit of peach fuzz on his upper lip that radiates straight attorney energy. Just by the way he looks, you can tell that he gets no play whatsoever. My brother has never had a girlfriend, but he will constantly pull up Instagram and talk to me about the girls being super hot or super effable. Anyways, fast forward to our poor dog. I had been noticing my dog acting different lately. We have had this dog for 10 years, and usually she is full of energy, always running to us and jumping on us when we get home, always barking and wanting to play games. For the past month, she had been acting really weird. When I got home from school, there was no barking and she didn't come running or jumping. She just stayed in her dog bed pretty much all day. She also is usually always hungry and begging for food, but now she barely eats anything, even when I fill up the entire food bowl for her. At first I didn't think much of it, as she is getting pretty old and I thought she was just tired or weak. However, one day my brother told my parents that he was sick and they let him stay home from school. My parents both work 9-to-5 jobs, and I don't get back from school until 3 o'clock. One day I decided to go home during one of my free periods because I had left my math notebook at home. When I walked in the house, I could hear a weird noise coming from upstairs. I walked upstairs to go check it out, and as I got closer, I could hear what sounded like my brother grunting and panting. At first I thought he was just jaking off, but I started to hear a higher, squeaky sound as well. I started becoming suspicious, so I decided to take a quick peek into my brother's room. I crept up to his doorway and slowly peeked my head around the doorpost. Oh my, GD, there he was, naked, and on his knees on the floor with 2 hands grabbing either side of my sweet little dog's body, thrusting his pelvis back and forth against the back end of my dog. I let out a gasp, and my brother immediately turned and saw me and yelled at me to get out. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. I told my parents when they got back from work what I had just witnessed, and my mom nearly passed out on the ground when I told her. My parents decided that my brother isn't allowed to be near the dog anymore, and we are still deciding whether or not we will put her down to rid her of the suffering she has gone through. My poor dog, she was so sweet and now she is forever stained by my pubescent brothers. Family left me when they thought I wasn't my dad's son, but now they want to get back in touch. 4 years ago, Dad found out my mom had a lifelong affair, more than one. But that's another story. He knew about a couple of affairs she had in the past, and forgave her, hanging in there for the kids, moving on, yada yada. But that time 4 years ago, he found out me and my 2 siblings might not be as kids, considering time of affair. This was the first time we all heard of moms, well, everything really. There was a whole DNA thing, and it turned out my siblings were my dad's, and I was not. Cool, right? So Dad leaves Mom, divorces her, moves out, takes both my siblings with him. Not me, though. I stay behind with Mom, who hits a new low finding herself alone, and we both become pretty much outcasts as far as most of the family is concerned. My older brother was particularly mean to me. We were really tight before, and the crap he did to me, I swear, had I been bigger at the time I would have punched him hard more than once. I don't want to get into details because I can't, since I could be recognized, but stuff happened, and I got DNA again, and as it turns the heck out, DNA number 1 was messed up, and I am my dad's kid. Now, I don't need legal advice on this. Grandpa is the man, always had my back, we got a lawyer, and are looking to settle. But Dad wants back in my life. Brother is calling and wanting to meet up and talk crap. I don't want to. I want these people out of my life. Mom already forgave everyone. She is going on a date with my dad. And I feel sick, but not my business, right? I wish them both good luck, but I want none of it. Only nobody leaves me be. I keep hearing that they're family, and I ought to hear them out and give them a chance or I'll regret it later. And that the only reason I want talk to them is 'cause I'm a teen and stupid or some other crappy explanation. So, give me some perspective here, please. Do I sound unreasonable when I say, thanks? But hell no. Thanks.
What's the fastest you've ever seen a marriage turn into a disaster? Went to a friend's wedding reception. My parents were invited because they're from the neighborhood, and Dad's in good with her dad and mom, so the reception goes relatively well, nothing fancy. I'm sitting there after coming back from the restroom and my dad has his eyes shut, but he's clearly awake. "Robbie's gay," he said to me. Robbie was the groom. My dad has really good gaydar, probably because my uncle's gay. There was something about him, but I chalked it up to me being hungry. I was wrong. Anyway, wedding goes fine, all is well. Robbie was a really, really good dancer. Like exceptionally good. Strange, I thought. There's dancing, more drinking, etc. So we go back to our hotel room. Wife and I go to bed. We get up the next morning for the complimentary breakfast. The blushing bride is there, surrounded by her friends and parents. Groom is nowhere to be seen. Bride is crying her eyes out. We decide to beat a hasty retreat at this point. About 6 weeks later I'm back at home, and Dad mentions what happened. "Hey, remember that wedding we went to?" "Yeah, why was she crying in the lobby?" I replied. And then said to me, a while after the wedding she went downstairs to take a few pictures with her bridesmaids. She went back to their room to get something and found Robbie spread out on their bed taking it in the rear from one of his male guests. Oh. My God. I was actually in shock. The marriage managed to last until 9 a.m. Monday morning when she could file for divorce. The wedding was Saturday. Less than 48 hours is pretty crazy to me.
I don't love my disabled wife and I resent that I have to care for her, but I will probably never leave her. She was my high school sweetheart, the love of my life, my soulmate. Then, she had her injury. One day we were at my parents' house and chilling by the pool. She was always happy and this day was no exception. I was sitting in a chair close to the pool and told her to come over to me. She did her awkward little run over to me but was too close to the pool and slipped. She immediately hit her head and blood was spilling everywhere. It was the back of her head too, which didn't make it any better. She seemed okay at first, but now I can probably reduce that to being in shock. After about 1 minute she fainted and wasn't waking up. I called the police immediately, and she was rushed to the hospital immediately. Sadly, she fell into a coma due to severe trauma to the head, and I had no idea whether she would ever wake up again. When she did, she was severely disabled and she was a different person. I hoped her old personality would come back with time and therapy, but it's been 5 years since she woke up, and I think this is just what she's like now. She's not a bad person. She's just not the woman I fell in love with. Parts about her personality that I cherished just disappeared. Her, little quirks here and there that would make me smile while watching her, all gone. I have to feed her because she can't use her hands very well, and have to roll her around on a wheelchair everywhere we go. I miss the adventures we used to go on. It felt like it was us against the world, and now, it feels like me against it alone. I know I'm expected to be grateful that I got my wife back, but the truth is, my wife died the day she was injured. I hoped I would be able to fall in love with this new person, but you can't just force yourself to fall in love with someone, so I resent her. I know it isn't her fault, it's not fair that I feel this way towards her, but I resent this new woman for taking my wife away, and for the fact that I have to take care of her. I also have realized that she has caught on to my feelings in some sense. More recently now she asks me if I'm doing all right, and I just fake a smile and say I am, when in truth, I am hurting. I know I can never tell her because that would destroy her, and I can't do that to someone I love that much. I can't leave her. She has no one else to care for her, and she still has my wife's voice, her laugh, her smile. I couldn't bear to lose those. They're all I have left of the woman I love, so I pretend. I pretend I don't notice that she's a completely new person. I pretend I still love her. I pretend I don't resent her. I care for her. I've accepted that this is my life now. I'm not gonna let her go. My dog hospitalized an autistic kid for hitting him with a lightsaber. I have 2 big goofy labs, Max and Bailey, sharing a tiny townhouse with me. Not ideal, but we make it work, hitting up the local dog parks and whatnot. My boys are sweethearts, lovable with people on our walks but protective of our place like guard dogs should be. The neighbor's kid, though, he has no sense of boundaries. He's always tapping on our windows and rattling the fence. The other day I was just out of the shower when I heard Max and Bailey losing their minds downstairs, barking and clawing at the back door. I raced down to find the 9-year-old terror next door, squirting a high-powered water gun at my dogs through the glass. He was yelling at them at the top of his lungs in some made-up language. My dogs were going berserk, frothing at the mouth, desperate to defend our territory. This wasn't the first time I'd had to talk to his mom about this. I pounded on their door. She opened it, harried as always, and apologized as her son ran circles around her, swinging his lightsaber. "I'm so sorry. He has autism, and it's hard to get him to behave. We're working with doctors, but it's difficult." I took a breath and told her as calmly as I could to please keep her kid away from my dogs. She gave him a timeout in his room for a few minutes. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. 10 minutes later, I went to let the dogs out, and there he was again, still blasting them with water and now smacking the glass with a toy lightsaber, shouting the forces with me, "Evil dogs." At my confused laughs, Max had finally had enough of this little menace harassing them. He burst through the doggy door at full speed, hell-bent on chasing this kid off our property. I ran out after them, shouting for Max to stop, my heart in my throat. But it was too late. Max knocked the kid over with a giant paw, and then things got loud. The kid started screaming and crying about criminal scum and galactic injustice as my dog slobbered all over his face. He had pinned the little terror to the ground. His mom came running out and was hysterical at the sight of this. I called Max off and he came trotting over, tail wagging, proud of himself for defending our place. The kid just laid there for a minute, stunned at being bested by a Sith Lord in canine form. The ambulance came and took the overdramatic little Jedi to get checked out. Max was seized by animal control to be quarantined for 2 weeks. I went to visit Max as often as I could. The vet said he'd likely just get a slap on the wrist, since he was protecting his home, and I had no other incidents with him. But my nerves were shot, worried my beloved goofball might be taken from me. 2 days later, animal control returned Max to me, with just a citation and fine I'd have to pay. The neighbors now refused to even make eye contact. And to make matters worse, I just got served with a lawsuit. The kid's mom is suing me for damages due to pain and suffering. Is there any way I can fight this since her son trespassed and hit my dog first? I'm not trans, but I didn't know I was a boy until I was 7. Everyone around me thinks that I was brought up by foster families because I had a terrible early childhood. I deliberately keep it vague and say stuff like, I'd rather not go into it so that people will just assume I was abused in some way, and they'll stop asking about it. That's because it's not true. For the first 7 years of my life, I was brought up as a girl by my psycho birth mother, who really wanted a daughter. She didn't let the snag of giving birth to a boy stop her from trying to raise a girl. She was a pretty successful professional in a legal field, and had me through an anonymous donor from a fertility clinic. It was just the two of us all my life. We had contact with other people, of course, but they rarely got very close. I had lots of friends, but was always supervised. I found out way after that my mother's strong puritanical Christianity was a lie. She used to explain why she was so strict about me being private and never letting anyone see me get changed or anything. I just accepted all of this as fact, having never been told anything different. I was sent to a religious school for girls and actually had a really great childhood. I was a bit of a tomboy and played with Lego and toy animals rather than dolls and stuff. But that's not unusual, and no one ever questioned if I was a girl, even me. I knew about men and women but had never really seen a naked person. My mother never ever spoke to me about it, but I had the impression that when I grew up and got melons and stuff, my manhood would just fall off or something and boom, I would be a woman. I carried on with my happy girlhood. Then my whole world collapsed. One day, a teacher accidentally spilled a cup of hot coffee over me at school. The liquid soaked through my clothes and was scalding me badly. I was in so much pain. The staff immediately stripped me out of my dress and underwear to get the hot coffee away from my skin. I remember the nurse almost fainting as she looked my naked body up and down and saw my manhood. The cops were called immediately. I got taken to speak with who I now realize was social services. They asked me a bunch of questions about life at home and stuff. Meanwhile, my mother was taken in for questioning too. She refused to acknowledge me as male and insisted I was her daughter. I wasn't allowed to go back home but got put with a foster family and went through loads of therapy and stuff. Literally overnight, I had lost everything. My mother, my home, all my toys, all my clothes. I moved schools too, so I also lost all my friends. They cut all my hair off and told me I wasn't a girl anymore. It was really traumatic. The first foster home wasn't that great. The family had 3 boys already, and going from a sheltered upbringing to a testosterone-filled environment was really difficult. They buzzed my hair short, and kept it that way. I hated it. They always had to hold me down every time. They tried to force me to be masculine, and I was just too confused about what they wanted. Anything girly was reprimanded, and I felt so lost and alone because nothing I did was right. I tried to unalive myself when I was 11, and tried again at 13. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. After the second attempt, they moved me to a different foster family. I consider them to be my parents. They were awesome. They actually stood up for me. The first thing was that they let me grow out my hair. My new parents flatly refused to touch it and said that loads of boys had long hair. They also let me quit karate and football and take up swimming and jazz dance. Since I'd been in care, no one had ever stood up for my right to choose what activities to do, or how to dress before. It was amazing. In the end, I came out of it with a pretty healthy gender identity. I'm definitely a man, just not the most butch guy ever. I'm fine with that. I went through school and got my degree and have a pretty good job and an amazing supportive wife. Everything looks great. But I can never speak about my early childhood and how I grew up as a little girl. My wife is not the woman I used to know. She let the fame get to her. I met my wife when I was 15 in high school. She was 17. That latter part of my teenage years was probably the hardest of my life, since in half a year I lost my mother. Never knew my dad, so she was the only thing I could consider family. At that time, me and my wife were only friends, but she was there for me and grieved with me. I think I started developing feelings for her during that time. We started dating when I was 17, and we got married 7 years later. For context, my wife was very frugal and unmaterialistic. She never cared about clothes, makeup, brands, cars, etc. Always spending money on thrift shops or during sales on whatever she liked. I remember trying to impress her with my 370Z just for her to react with, "What car is this? A Corolla?" So yeah, I think you get the point. But that's what I liked about her the most. And also, she was the most caring person I ever knew. In our family, she's the successful one, always working big corporations. Regarding myself, I always worked as a community first responder for my local hospital. The salary wasn't high, but I loved my job, helping people as much as I could. Fast forward, 2 years ago, she received an offer from an important company for an executive position, offering 4 times her salary. That wasn't even bad to begin with, but we would have to move to a different city. At first, I was doubtful, since that would mean losing my job, which meant I could not contribute financially to our family for an indefinite time period, but she said that she could sustain the family effortlessly with this new job, and with that new extra time that I had, I could look after the house and groceries until I found a new job. Since she was so enthusiastic, I accepted. I was happy to support my wife's career. Well, the best way I can put it is that my wife underwent a crazy transformation. She started caring more and more about luxury brands, jewels, cars, etc. I don't think you can quite imagine my disbelief seeing her coming back home with a Versace bag after seeing her for years, wearing $10 coats from our local thrift shop. She also started hanging out with her new female coworkers a lot. My wife isn't very extroverted or very social, so that was quite the shock, but I was very happy for her. I thought that she finally found her dimension after years of struggling. But that happiness started fading after she started coming home way later every day, and later, and later, until it was a miracle to be able to talk to her for 10 minutes a day. I thought it was because she was busy with work, since being an executive means lots of work, until she started posting lots of photos of her with her coworkers drinking, going shopping and stuff. The fun part is, she never finds time to reply to my text, but she always has a minute to post photos. And when she replies, she says that she's working. She also literally stops saying things to me altogether. Have you ever experienced your wife or husband going to work with an Audi A3 and then coming back home with a Porsche Macan GTS? Well, I did, and let me tell you, it's no fun. I confronted her on if it was a business-issued car, which it isn't. Then on why she spent so much money on a car when she didn't care not even a little about cars. Her passive-aggressive response was that it's her money, and that she is entitled to do as she pleases. Or have you experienced not seeing your wife or husband coming back home for a night and not replying to text just to receive a call the following afternoon saying that she forgot to tell me that she left for a business trip? Well, I hope you haven't. But the worst is when she invited me for lunch with her coworkers. I was very happy because that was the first time we were doing something together in months, and I thought that what I've experienced before was only a phase and that it was all over. My wife left first because she had work to do, so I dressed up nicely and left 2 hours after to the scheduled restaurant. For context, I sold years before my 370Z because I didn't need a sports car anymore, so my daily driver is a very frugal Renault Clio. I like it, and since I don't need that much, I don't have reasons to upgrade to a pricier model or brand. Well, I get to the restaurant, park my car in front of it, get inside, just to see my wife staring at me horror-stricken. She gets up from the table and takes me outside of the restaurant, then proceeds to literally insult me for parking my Clio in front of the restaurant and in front of her table, saying that I embarrassed her and that I should have parked it somewhere hidden. I was completely at a loss for words. I asked her why, and she said that it was a cheap, non-luxury car, not representative of her lifestyle. She then gets back inside the restaurant, warning me not to embarrass her like this again. I attended the rest of the lunch in shock. That day I realized that that girl I had at my side wasn't my wife. It wasn't the girl I married anymore. My wife is now out of the house, celebrating a great year for the company, and I'm here at home writing this with the divorce papers in front of me. I don't think I can handle this situation anymore. I tried lots and lots of time to talk to her, to tell her how I feel, to tell her that she changed, that she's not the same woman I knew. But she just doesn't listen. She always says that she has no time and that she needs to work. Or she tries to minimize the situation, saying that it's not true and that she never changed. She wanted kids, and now she doesn't want them anymore, saying that they would rob her time from her career. She wanted to travel, but now she doesn't want to do it, for the same reason. Is she really the same woman I married? But still, I can't bring myself to talk about divorce with her. Most likely because I hope that somewhere hidden inside of her there's still the woman I loved and still love, even if it doesn't seem like the case. Today I messed up by walking in my son's room without knocking, so I messed up by going to tell my child, 14 male, good night. This actually happened a few weeks ago, but I am now strong enough to tell the tale. Everyone else was asleep, and I wanted to pop in and tell my oldest good night before bed. I opened the door and instantly made eye contact. I noticed his eyes were twice the size of normal, almost in a cartoonish manner. Then I noticed his hand. And what it was doing, for about a second, we were both frozen in a what do I do state while staring at each other, and I shut the door and ran to bed thinking maybe he doesn't need a good night. After all, I lay in bed thinking, my eyes, debating on whether sleeping would remove this image in my brain or just using a Brillo pad directly to them would. I mean, who needs their vision anyway, right? Maybe it's my fault for not knocking. Maybe he should have locked the door. Maybe I should avoid him for the entirety of his continued childhood. The next day after work, I sit him down and asked if we should talk about the thing no one wants to talk about, and he responded with, "Please no." I told him it was okay, but it could have easily been anyone, including his younger siblings, and in the future, maybe lock the door or use a room with much better locks like the bathroom. He looks embarrassed. I told him I wasn't sure what he was upset about, considering I was the one who had to boil my eyeballs to scour this vision from my memory, which of course gets him laughing. When it came time for me to tell him good night that night, I knocked loudly, slowly opened the door, knocked some more, slowly poked my head in, and knocked again. He was playing on his laptop and couldn't stop laughing. I'm glad he found so much humor in my actions and can feel unashamed in this situation. I will continue to knock it and try to forget what I saw, but I don't think I'll forget how his eyes grew 3 times the size that night. It was like the Grinch's heart. I didn't think humans' eyes could get so big. All this being said, I love my kid and well, everybody poops, so I'm not upset. I just live every day with a firm grasp on knocking from here on out. No one came to my birthday party. I'm honestly so done. I've finally hit rock bottom. It's 4 a.m. and all the alcohol I've drank to numb the pain is finally coming out of my system, and I'm sitting here alone, sobbing now, finally feeling in full force the gravity of what has happened. Today it was my 25th birthday. Long story short, I threw a birthday party for my close friends of about 10-15 people that I've known intimately for years and have been through a lot with. Just for background, I feel like every time I plan a party or get together, I have to constantly remind people of it in subtle ways in the coming days, or they won't come. Almost like I have to beg them to be there. What do you want on your pizza? Oh, I can't wait to see you. Should I get wine? Etc. To keep it in their minds, or they'll find something else better. 2 of them forgot the party and made other plans. When I texted them if they were coming, they apologized and said they were going out of town. I confronted them about forgetting the party I mentioned 2 weeks ago, and they were nonchalantly like, "Oh, sorry." Many others canceled the day of the party for bullcrap excuses like having to clean, not feeling good, I'm just so tired, etc. One was even so irresponsible to drink herself into a stupor last night to the point she texted me the morning and said she couldn't be there because she was sick from drinking too much. Absolutely irresponsible to do that. Knowing you have somewhere to be tomorrow, it hurt me a lot. One canceled because we had a 40% chance of having a thunderstorm warning in the evening, and they were concerned about being in the rain. It was sunny outside and is yet to rain 12 hours later. In the end, 2 of 15 showed up an hour after the party supposedly started. I was grateful, but honestly just sad and humiliated. I just wanted to be alone. I'm sitting on $200 worth of food, decorations, and the most painful, my unopened birthday cake. I paid a lot for it and I was really looking forward to enjoying it with my friends. But now, I just want to trash it and not look at it. You see, the reason this party meant so much for me is because I've had an awful summer. I've had 3 people close to me die, so I haven't had much time to see people, and I'm a week out from a risky surgery that could end my life. My friends know this. I don't talk about it constantly because it is so draining to the vibe, but it has been mentioned. I just wanted to enjoy one last get-together with the people I cared about. I've never felt so sad, betrayed, and violated. I finally hit rock bottom. But it has been mentioned. I just wanted to enjoy one last get-together with the people I cared about. I've never felt so sad, betrayed, and violated. I finally hit rock bottom. Am I the a-hole for telling everyone that my girlfriend secretly writes cringe fan fiction? My girlfriend Sandra and I have been together for about a year now. The other day, I was out with some mates, and after our night, I was slightly tipsy, and I thought of surprising Sandra at home since I have keys to her flat. When I got there, I noticed she was asleep on the couch and her laptop was on the coffee table. She hates sleep mode, so her laptop was on, and not even locked. She had a Word document and it seemed like she was working on it. I caught some words and couldn't help myself, so I started reading. I took the laptop to the kitchen to not wake her up. Turns out it was romantic fan fiction about one of her favorite TV series. Nothing steamy, just some silly, girly, romantic kind of stuff. You know, the ones teenage girls dream of, and then realize that no man actually behaves like that. I honestly laughed out loud a couple of times at how ridiculous it was. I was curious and desired to spy a little bit to see if she'd written more, and discovered her accounts on 2 platforms for fan fiction. Anyway, she's written a lot of them. All cutesy, girly stories and some naughty stuff. When she woke up in the morning, I confronted her about this and she was defensive and started going on about privacy and stuff. I told her to cut the crap and to admit that she feels dissatisfied about our relationship, and that's why she's writing. I gave her a reality check and said, the soft men she writes about were unrealistic. She was really angry and kicked me out. I told her, I'm not one of her characters and won't tolerate her mood swings, but she still kicked me out. Later that day, we were meeting our friends for lunch. Sandra came but barely spoke to me. At some point we were talking about something, and I mentioned what Sandra writes, hoping that people will laugh, and one guy did. The rest just ignored my news, which kind of surprised me. I thought maybe they hadn't heard, so I just said it again but a little bit louder. I tried to continue the topic and understand why everyone seemed okay with the cringe, but Sandra called me an a-hole and went to the bathroom. My friend told me it would be best if I left, but I didn't want to do so because I didn't do anything bad. When Sandra came back, she told me her writing is her private thing, and I'm an a-hole for bringing it up. I told her to grow up and call me when she comes to her senses, but she hasn't called me since. I told my other friends and they agreed with me that what Sandra writes is cringe and should have been called out, and they don't think I am the a-hole, so I'm still confused about my other friends' reaction. I need an impartial opinion. Am I the a-hole for telling my friends? Psycho friend made people shun me and forced me to transfer college. Brooke, F26, and I, F25, have known each other since high school. We weren't really friends then. That changed when we met each other again in college and found ourselves taking the same course. We became really close friends, at least until we both liked the same guy. Ben attended the same class as we did, and a kind of three-way friendship developed. I was interested in Ben, but I backed off when it became clear that Brooke liked him. Unfortunately for Brooke, however, he wasn't interested in her but in me. She asked him out, but he declined, telling her he wasn't romantically interested in her. He was interested in me. She probably didn't take it that well. She blocked me on all channels and started telling lies about me, so I avoided her. Ben also distanced himself from her because she tried to badmouth me before him. Although Ben and I remained friends, nothing romantic developed, and he soon became interested in another girl. Still, Brooke couldn't leave it at that, and complained to the university administration that I was stalking and harassing her. I had to go to the dean and explain myself. I then explained the situation and showed the last messages she had insulted me with. It was also clear that I had blocked her and deleted her number. The matter was dropped, and I hoped I finally had peace. A few days later, news broke that Brooke had attempted suicide and blamed me for stressing her out. That made me persona non grata on campus. I couldn't take all the drama anymore, so I applied for a transfer to another university. I switched to the next semester and was glad to be able to put it all behind me when I received messages again. Brooke had attacked the girl Ben was dating with a knife when she and Ben returned from a date. Thank God the girl wasn't severely hurt, and Brooke got kicked out of the university. Her parents put her in a clinic. The girl is just insane. X leaves me because I'm too fat. He just can't believe it when we meet again after 2 years. Brian was the hottest guy I've ever dated. Tall, dark, and handsome. We met each other in college. I couldn't explain why, but he asked me out and initiated the whole relationship. A little about me: I'm 5'7", 220 wallops at the time. No makeup, no hourglass figure. I liked comparing myself to a blobfish. That's why I was more than unsettled when this conventionally attractive man, Henry Cavill type, was determined to get together with me. But he was not only good-looking but also really sweet in character. He tried to cheer me up and gently and understandingly motivated me to change my lifestyle a bit. He was very active, though. Instead of telling me to eat less crap like my last boyfriend did, he would come over every weekend and help me with meal prep. He motivated me to do sports with him, be it for walks or lightweight training. I really believed that I had finally found a man who would give me positive encouragement and help me achieve goals that I didn't have enough discipline to reach on my own. Although Brian and I didn't have intimacy, that didn't bother me. Cuddling was enough for me. And even though I lost a few pounds after a year, I didn't feel comfortable posing naked before him. That didn't seem to bother him either. After a year, however, I noticed that he was changing. He grew impatient, harsh in tone. The routine formed over the past few months had been swept away. He came by less and less, and when I asked him for help because I wanted to learn new exercises, he snapped at me that there was no point anyway. During the conversation, he got louder and louder. I asked him what I did wrong, and he yelled at me that I wasn't motivated enough, that he couldn't be with an ugly fat girlfriend, and that he left me. I was so shocked that I just asked him to leave my apartment. I then slipped into a deep depression. It was so bad that I sometimes couldn't even get out of the house. One of my college friends, Ivy, who had noticed that I was no longer on campus, finally stopped by to check on me. So I told her everything. So far, we've only had superficial contact. My real friends hadn't contacted me for weeks. Then Ivy told me she didn't know I was with Brian because she had always seen him with other women. He went on dates at night and was currently dating a pretty blonde law student. I showed her pictures and texts with and by Brian because I knew she didn't believe me. Ivy was absolutely shocked. What she told me finally brought me down. Why had he put up with me when he'd rather be with other women, more beautiful women? After a few days, I pulled myself together and returned to the lectures, determined to confront Brian. X leaves me because I'm too fat. He just can't believe it when we meet again after 2 years. When I finally got back on campus, it wasn't 15 minutes before I saw Brian. He sat with a girl on the lawn and made out with her as if they were teenagers. It was just gross. I chose not to go to him. He was surrounded by his friends who all looked at me, laughing. That's when I realized that I should have noticed something was wrong much earlier. I had never met his friends. He had never left the house with me except for the gym. I had let him fool me in the truest sense of the word. Maybe I was just hoping I was wrong, that this relationship was real. Brian gave me a sideways glance and then turned back to the girl. I don't know what it mobilized in me, but the anger and the pain released something in me. In fact, I managed to push myself to continue my training and diet as he taught me. I changed gyms and met friendly people there who cheered me on. All of a sudden, the pounds just dropped. In fact, I didn't see Brian anymore. I wondered if he had dropped out or changed courses. I can't say I cared, though. For once, I concentrated entirely on myself. And the successes were really short of coming. X leaves me because I'm too fat. He just can't believe it when we meet again after 2 years. The 2 years until graduation went by faster than I thought. As already mentioned, I didn't see Brian anymore. I didn't hear anything either, even if the other students said some nonsense in the first few months that didn't interest me at all. During that time, I had lost almost 50 pounds, gained a lot of muscle, and generally didn't look the same as before. I also felt better. In fact, one or the other guy invited me on a date. However, I was very reluctant to do so because I often felt like the blobfish I had seen myself as. But that changed when I met Chris. He attended a course with me, and we began to get to know each other on a friendly level, the basis of which something romantic developed. I was really very much in love. Chris also accompanied me to the graduation ceremony. That's when I saw Brian for the first time since we broke up. He looked terrible. From what I saw, I'd only assumed that he had smoked 1 or 2 joints too many. Presumably, he had also taken other substances. He had lost much of his muscle mass, and his face had indefinable blotches that didn't flatter his noble features. He kept trying to get to me, looking at me in shock, but he was constantly distracted by other participants in the party. I felt sorry for him for a brief moment until one of his friends approached me. She looked me up and down and frowned before saying, "Wow, I guess I'm losing the bet." I asked her what she meant. Then she told me that Brian had made a deal with his circle of friends that he could make me lose weight. I felt like I was in a bad 90s fling. She had been studying abroad for the last few years and hadn't realized that he and I were no longer in touch. That's why she still thought we were together. Christ heard that, and without hesitation he walked up to Brian and punched him in the face. Long story short, Brian actually didn't graduate, because he was busy partying. I'd lost weight, felt better, and through it, I'd met the man I would marry in 2 weeks.